think we've got critical mass. Let's get started. Welcome to the Department of Energy's webinar for our Pathways to Commercial Liftoff. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Today, we'll be talking about long duration energy storage, or LDES for short. My name is Jigar Shah, and I'm the director of the Loan Programs Office here at the Department of Energy. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone of why we are here and what the Liftoff effort is about. These Liftoff reports represent a department-wide initiative to strengthen engagement between the public and private sectors to accelerate the commercialization and deployment of critical clean energy technologies. Our investments at the Department of Energy must catalyze around $100 billion of private sector formation across each of the 20+ clean energy technologies and sectors in order for them to achieve commercial liftoff. This is why we think of DOE's role in the energy transition as private sector-led, government-enabled. To stay relevant to the issues capital allocators are facing in each sector, the Liftoff reports will be living documents and will be regularly updated as we gather more input from industry and the commercialization outlook evolves. We started this effort with 4 technology areas: advanced nuclear, clean hydrogen, long-duration energy storage, and carbon management. All the Liftoff reports are available at liftoff.energy.gov, along with previously recorded webinars you can check out. In addition to today's fireside chat and deep dive on LDES, further webinars covering the new carbon management report and other future Liftoff topics like industrial decarbonization will follow over the next weeks and months. Now, I have the privilege of introducing our speakers for today's virtual fireside chat. We have joining us Jean Rodriguez, Assistant Secretary for Electricity in the Office of Electricity, David Crane, the Director of the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, Vanessa Chan, Chief Commercialization Officer and Director of the Office of Technology Transitions. Thank you all for joining me today. Let's get started. Vanessa, starting with you, 2 key questions the report answers are: what is LDES and what is its value proposition? With so many different technologies and durations, can you take us through how the report defined the LDES market?
Great question. So first of all, LDES stands for long duration energy storage, but even that is a term which means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So in order to establish a shared fact base, we all have to get on the same page for terminology on storage technologies as a first step to broad scale action. So there's a lot of different terms to describe LDES projects, from diurnal to seasonal, mechanical, electrochemical, pumped hydro, etc. But we chose instead to segment the market based on the duration of discharge rather than the underlying technology. And the reason why is this is a nod to the market. The goal here with these Liftoff reports is to address the market needs. And we are absolutely agnostic to which technology we are going to use to pursue it. We just want to meet the market needs. And so this segmentation allows us to focus on the use cases that can be solved by LDES and start to quantify the value of each potential project based on what it provides to the grid. So the report focused on 2 segments of duration: intraday, which is 10 to 36 hours, primarily serving energy shifting use cases, and multi-day, 36 to 160 hours, focused on resilience. So everyone out there, we really would appreciate if you guys use consistent terminology so we can all make sure we're doing the same thing when we're solving for intraday and multi-day applications.
Thanks, Vanessa. Jean, could you talk about the implications of a successful LDES liftoff?
Certainly, and thanks for that question. Let me just say the answer is one word: huge, huge. That's what the answer is. You know, I got, all kidding aside, as someone whose office is focused on ensuring America maintains a reliable, resilient, and secure power grid, I personally view breakthroughs in grid scale, long duration energy storage as a critical and key component to enabling a future-ready power grid for our country. And here's why, Jigar. Storage can be the key to efficiently and economically integrating renewable energy at scale that's never been done before. And not just renewable energy sources, but our increasingly diverse mix of energy resources as well. But we can do that and also maintain and improve reliability and resilience benefits. So that's the big story. In my office, then, we're working to prove and to improve the safety, the reliability, the performance of long duration energy storage. Again, as Vanessa pointed out, agnostic to what specific technology is being used, while also making it cost effective as possible. See, we see those characteristics as what is really critical to enabling wide-scale adoption of energy storage technologies in the real world. In short, performance goes up, price comes down. See, the LDS Liftoff report finds that a net zero US power grid could include approximately 460 gigawatts of long duration energy storage by 2050. And that level of storage, Jigger, that level of storage could deliver approximately $10 to $20 billion in savings, cost savings by 2050. That's savings from reduced operating costs on the grid, but also savings from avoided capital expenditures, including expenditures for build out of some, say, 200 gigawatts of new fossil fuel generation assets that might otherwise be needed to preserve the ability to meet peak demand. So as I said at the beginning, that's not a big deal. That's a huge deal, Jigger. And it represents a tremendous potential benefit for the American grid and for the American people. That's why my office, the Office of Electricity, we're focused on long duration energy storage right alongside grid and components and systems, and right alongside grid communications and grid controls as the key drivers of the development of a 21st century grid for the American people. It's a big deal. And as you can tell, we're very excited about it at OE.
It's huge. David, in spite of all this, we've heard from investors and buyers loud and clear that LDES is not quite ready for liftoff yet. Could you explain the role OSED is playing in demonstrating LDES technologies to address these concerns?
Jigger, I'm happy to do that. But first, I gotta say, it's tough following Gene, man. I don't have the hand gestures that that Gene has. So I apologize.
It's the hair. It's the hair, David.
All the listeners. But OSED, the part of the DOE that I run, we're the new kid on the block compared to the parts of the DOE that Vanessa, Jigger, and Gene run. So just a bit of background, Office of Clean Energy Demonstration. We demonstrate projects, technologies at scale. That's our mission. That's actually a historic mission of the DOE, but we set up by the bipartisan infrastructure law, a year old. We take a broad definition of demonstrate in that as we demonstrate these projects, we're also supposed to be looking to ensure replicability of the projects, not just technology replicability, but commercial replicability, and also to make sure that this wave of projects that we're going to help fund, that when they land into a receptive ecosystem so that they can be viable long term. Currently, we have a solicitation, in DOE parlance, a FOA, underway in the area of LDES, $500 million. And the point of this is to demonstrate LDES technologies to advance energy storage systems towards widespread commercialization and deployment, principally by lowering the cost and increasing the duration of the energy storage. As Vanessa said, we have intraday and interday. So we have a need in all forms of LDES. This, like I said, this solicitation is underway. We expect a selection in the next few months, which will lead to negotiation and ultimately award. We know that the private sector is not only participating in these demonstration projects because we had plenty of responses, but also that even those standing on the sidelines are looking to see what we're proving up here so that they can understand the technology. And again, that's why I would refer everyone in terms of the market opportunity here to the Liftoff reports, because as you'll see in the Liftoff reports, we think we need $9 to $12 billion of investment in this space by 2030 to provide the system with the long duration energy storage that it needs. So one other aspect of the liftoff reports that I would invite everyone's attention to is that to help refine people's thinking, we've included 6 project templates out, use cases for LDES. And so we encourage you to look at those portions of the liftoff report when you read the document tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, David. I think that's really well said, and something we are focused on in a big way at LPO as well. We have several projects seeking loans from our office across LDES business models. We also have several applications in the lithium-ion supply chain and in hydrogen for seasonal storage. This is a big reason why this report is so important. It reflects a broad set of barriers we're seeing from our applicants across business models and the current dialogue we are engaged in with the private sector about how to solve them. Gene, beyond full-scale demonstration and deployment, the report also emphasizes the need for continued research and development to drive these cost and performance improvements. Can you talk more about how DOE and the Office of Electricity are supporting this goal?
Well, not only can I talk more about it, you're not going to be able to stop me, Jigger, because I just want to point back to the report as David did. The Liftoff report accurately and appropriately reports that we need to make substantial technological progress in order to have long duration energy storage fulfill its potential as a widely adopted grid asset. So we have to be cognizant of that. And specifically, the Liftoff report says that the market needs to see capital costs cut in half and round trip efficiency of energy storage improve from 7 to 15%. And all of that has to happen this decade. Well, that's a pretty big challenge, as I know you recognize, but here's the good news, Jigger. Those targets are already aligned with the internal targets that DOE is already working toward with our long duration energy storage Earthshot. And they're also aligned with the goals and objectives that my office established for our energy storage grand challenge. So existing alignment is good news. So what's the great news? The great news is this. The targets we've established for our energy storage grand challenge aim higher than the Liftoff report, much higher. We've set a goal of reducing technology costs by 90% by 2030. And that's before any economies of scale reductions are taken into account. So that means if we hit the Earthshot goal, or even just come close, long duration energy storage will be performing well above what is needed to lift off. And I'm not going to leave you with that. I have one more bit of good news to share with you, Jigger, and that is that we're going to have plenty of shots on goal for this technology. As you and I sit here today, and as we speak on this webinar, there are over 100 technology providers spanning a wide range of technology types vying to compete for this market. That's why my Office of Electricity is engaged today with industry, with regulators, with the national labs to bring us all together to prepare for a future grid that incorporates long duration energy storage as a key asset for ensuring reliability, resilience, and affordability for the American people. Truly good news.
Thanks, Gene. Vanessa, another important point on reaching liftoff is on market evolution. Could you talk about what we mean and why this is important for commercialization?
Sure, and I echo Dave. It's hard to follow Gene here, and I think like if you guys act now, he's going to throw some steak knives. So everyone listening, go for it. So look, the key to commercialization is recognizing. This may seem pretty simple, but I think it's important to say this. Is we actually need to move the technology across the research, development, demonstration, deployment, or the RD&D continuum. So we have to go from the very early stage of R&D, which oftentimes in the national labs or other types of labs, and move it all the way to full-scale market deployment. And that is not easy. And the reason why it's not easy is there are so many other things besides technology milestones that we have to overcome. For example, we really have to understand the complexities of the existing value chain. How do you benchmark this new technology's value proposition against the incumbent solution? And ultimately, all of this boils down to, will a customer pay a price for new technology that is high enough to cover the capital and unit costs and to make a profit for everyone in the value chain? all of us are consumers and we are all price sensitive. We always know the price of everything. And so this is really important, especially in the case of long duration energy storage, is are we offering something which has a value proposition that we actually can charge a price that customers are willing to pay for. And so for LDES, there's existing value chain defined by the grid and power markets today. And like Jean mentioned earlier, these have traditionally really relied on fossil fuel-based generation assets to meet peak demand. And as more and more renewables come online, the grid has to find a new way of providing flexibility and reliability. When the sun is not shining and the wind is not blowing, how do we really use renewable sources? And this is where LDES is a really critical part of this solution. So as DOE is helping to mature the technology, the market needs to get ready for LDES. The state and ISO level market regulatory evolution is needed to compensate LDES for its value and services provided to the grid. Once again, going back to this idea of customers need to pay for the service. So to push for this value chain cooperation, the Office of Technology Transitions is working with the national labs on collaborative alignment for LDES. We're in the process of selecting a partner to work with key stakeholders to solve problems of economies of scale and enable the value of LDES systems to be better realized within the markets and the jurisdictions.
Thanks, Vanessa. David, I've heard that you have a little experience in power markets. Could you explain some of the market mechanisms discussed in the report?
Yeah, I don't know how current my knowledge is there, Jigger, but yeah, thanks. We all know that electricity, it's a commodity, maybe the purest commodity out there, and so it's a question of dollars and cents. And one of the key findings of the Liftoff report, and this is sort of a midpoint, is that in order to create a market, for LDES, we're looking at developers, technology providers in that field have to see a clear path to say $75 a kilowatt year. If it's in the competitive markets, if it's in a regulated market, then that sort of level of cost needs to be sort of inputted into the system as part of an integrated resource plan. We see a clear line of sight in terms of where the technology is, with the benefit of our helping scale it up. That the technology, in terms of its performance and its cost, can get to a point where $75 a kilowatt year leads to an economic return. The issue that the report outlines is that neither in the competitive markets or in the regulated markets is there really a mechanism yet to reward that. So what that means in the case of LDES is that there's a third party in the room. It's not just ourselves, the Federal Department of Energy and the sponsors / technology providers. We need to work with our partners at the ISOs and at the state public service commissions to create a market for LDES, so that when we achieve this cost down, there's a market that follows, a fast following market. The Liftoff report has a great map that shows you sort of what are the more conducive places to pursue LDES now, and places which may be lagging a bit, but could leapfrog with some favorable policies, since we all see the need for this. And then also, on that policy front, the Liftoff report also has some suggestions on policies that could be promulgated, at the state level, at the ISO level, that could, help encourage more LDES deployment, in those markets. So the final point I'd make, and Jigger, I find in life, I never go wrong when I try and sound like you, is that that what we're doing in LDES, like what we do in everywhere, it's going to be private sector led and government enabled, but almost more specifically, what we want to do for all the developers and the technology providers on the phone, we want to give you what it takes to allow you to want to go first, so that you get the benefit of being the first mover in this space, and put yourself in a situation where you're in the pole position, other people are following you, so that we can create rapid commercial adoption. So that's all I have to say about that, Jigger.
Thanks, David. I think it's one of the first webinars where we actually gained participants every 5 minutes during this thing. So I think you're doing a great job there.
They're looking for
And
the
that's a
steak
great
knives,
summary.
Jigger. They're looking for the steak knives.
That's a great summary of all the opportunities. One more thought, many of the LDES chemistries don't use critical minerals, so there's a real benefit there as well. And
Yeah.
with that, I want to thank you all for your insights and hard work in helping LDES achieve liftoff. The liftoff reports have been led by OTT, OSED, LPO, and are all done in deep partnership with the groups within DOE who are the experts in these technologies. In this case, Gene Rodriguez, who's leading OE, and others across the DOE complex, such as our colleagues in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, and many of our national labs. So if you haven't heard enough, please go to liftoff.energy.gov to download the first 4 reports, including LDES. I'm now going to hand it over to Stephen and Kate from the Office of Technology Transitions to walk through the detailed findings of the report.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jigger. Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Hendrickson, and I lead the market analysis team in the Office of Technology Transitions at DOE. Over the past few months, I've had the privilege of working on our long duration energy storage liftoff report with my colleague Kate Scott and many others from across the Department of Energy and industry. Following the fireside chat from the department leadership you just heard, we're excited to share our findings with everyone online today and those who watch the recording later on our website. As a reminder, you can download the full report and rewatch webinars at liftoff.energy.gov. And before we dive in, I also want to emphasize Jigger's opening comments that these reports are intended to be living documents. So we are already working to update our findings, and we welcome your additional feedback. You'll find a link to contact us at that website, liftoff.energy.gov. So with that, let's dive in. First, I will share the report's high-level findings, and then I'll hand it off to my colleague at OTT, Kate Scott, who will take you through the details behind many of these points and highlight where additional relevant analysis can be found in the report. We start by defining what we mean by long-duration energy storage, or LDES for short. Specifically, long-duration energy storage covers the set of technologies which can provide between 10 and 160 hours of duration of dispatch in a power context. The report defines and focuses on 2 market segments: intraday, or long-duration energy storage that operates between 10 and 36 hours, and multi-day, or LDES that operates between 36 and 160 hours, so about a week. Next, we dive into the value proposition of long-duration storage. We emphasize that the availability of cost-effective LDES technologies is an option to enable high renewable pathways and grid resilience, reduce the need for new natural gas build-out for reliability, and enhance energy independence by diversifying domestic energy storage supply chains. This proposition results in a net zero US power grid that could include somewhere around 460 gigawatts of LDES by 2050. However, multiple technologies compete with long-duration energy storage. So for LDES, we'll need market interventions to win and to achieve scale. Yet, pathways to leverage LDES are projected to deliver between $10 and $20 billion in savings annually by 2050. Finally, the second half of the report focuses on the pathway to liftoff for LDES, or what needs to happen for LDES to become a large, self-sustaining industry. We find that LDES technologies require public and private investment to drive down cost and improve technology performance, and market interventions to compensate LDES for the service it provides. Addressing these factors would allow the technology to scale to an industrial level in a net zero world. There are 3 key areas of action, which Kate will discuss in detail in a moment. First, we need technology and cost performance improvements on the order of 45 to 55% capital cost reduction and 7 to 15% round trip efficiency improvements from today. This can be achieved via grid scale demonstration projects, starting immediately with the near-term applications that value longer durations of dispatch. And in the report, we model 6 use cases that explore this further. Second, electricity markets and the regulatory environment need to evolve to provide compensation to LDES of at least $75 per kilowatt year. This evolution could occur at both the state level through things like longer integrated resource planning horizons, or LDES procurement carve-outs through state policy, or at the ISO level through expanded capacity or resource adequacy markets. Finally, as costs and revenues come together to create the market for long-duration energy storage, a flexible and rapid supply chain formation of up to $330 billion by 2050 and about 10 to 15 gigawatts of annual deployment by 2035 will be needed to avoid deployment bottlenecks ahead of a potential surge in demand. So with that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Kate, to guide us through the rest of the webinar. Thank you. Kate?
Thanks, Stephen. And hi, everybody, and thank you for joining today. So my name is Kate Scott. I am a senior consultant and contractor on the market analysis team at the Office of Technology Transitions. So for the rest of the time, I will take us through the charts in this report, which bring this summary to life. So first, we'll start with the same question that Jigger did. What exactly is long duration energy storage? Or by this point in the webinar, you know that at DOE, we call it LDES. In our interviews with investors, buyers, and technology providers, we heard there is often confusion with this definition. And so my next two slides set out to share with you how the Liftoff report defines the space. So first, we'll look at the market segments, and then second, we'll look at a technology snapshot. So on this page, we define the LDES market by duration of dispatch, or the amount of time a system can provide continuous power to the grid. We break the market into 4 segments. On the left, short duration, systems which dispatch for 0 to 4 hours. And this includes lithium-ion systems that are prevalent on the grid today, as well as other technologies. Next, we have intraday LDES, providing between 10 and 36 hours of dispatch, typically targeting energy shifting use cases. Then we have multi-day LDES, which is 36 to 160 hours, or about a week of dispatch, typically targeting resilience applications. And finally, seasonal shifting, where systems could dispatch for more than a week and are used to store energy generated in one season for use in another. These systems are often chemical technologies like hydrogen, which we have another Liftoff report on. So as mentioned, we really wanted this to reflect the market. And so it's worth noting that in this space, there are rarely hard cutoffs, which is why we've purposely blurred the colors of each segment, since applications and LDES systems can often span durations. With that in mind, for the rest of the talk, I will focus on the middle 2 segments of the market, the intraday and multi-day long duration energy storage. So the next part of our market definition focuses on summarizing all the technologies in the space, a tall order for a sector with over 100 different technology providers. So to simplify, we've segmented LDES technologies by the type of energy used. You'll see mechanical systems, then thermal systems, and finally electrochemical. Within each category, we show major technology approaches that are available in the market. Each row is then a summary of the publicly available data from multiple providers using the same or similar approaches. And for each approach, we then have a set of key characteristics: the duration of the system, the levelized cost of storage, the technology, the minimum deployment size, the average round trip efficiency, and the technology readiness level. Values that are darker blue indicate characteristics that are favorable for repeatable deployments and thus quick learning. And gray boxes indicate where there's insufficient public data to compare at this point. And then mountains, which are on the left-hand side, indicate approaches that have geologic constraints. And so you can think of this snapshot as a way to understand the characteristics of a certain LDES application and approach, and begin to consider which applications and use cases a system could be well suited for. This idea I'll revisit later in the webinar as we dive into our various use cases. So we know this chart is already out of date. This is such a fast-moving and diverse space. So that's why our team is excited for these to be living reports and updated regularly, so we can continue to understand how each of these different LDES approaches evolves. So now that we know what LDES is, our report moves on to clarifying the value proposition. So why should we be spending all this time, and why is Jean so excited at the beginning of this webinar? So we focus on 3 main areas in the report. First, how LDES enables high renewable development and enhances resilience. Specifically, LDES supports high renewable pathways by balancing intermittent renewables and reducing the costs and risks associated with grid expansion. LDES also enhances local resiliency to respond to increasingly extreme weather events. Second, LDES reduces the need for new natural gas. In a few minutes, I will show you how having available and cost-effective LDES reduces the need for 200 plus gigawatts of new natural gas in a net zero world, which allows pathways that leverage LDES to deliver between $10 to $20 billion in annual savings by 2050. No small number. Finally, LDES diversifies domestic energy storage supply chains and has a durable position in our system. Specifically, a diversified set of technologies reduces the risk of net zero goals being contingent upon lithium ion manufacturing build out and acknowledges the durable role of LDES even in scenarios with aggressive lithium ion cost performance. So to zoom in, our first point, which is on enabling renewables, this graph compares projected build out of LDES from our modeling efforts of two scenarios in a least cost capacity expansion model. So first, a business as usual scenario, which includes the benefits of the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act. And second, a scenario with a net zero target by 2050 and high amounts of renewables on the grid. So you'll see that in both scenarios, we require lithium ion batteries and intraday long duration energy storage. But in the high renewable scenario, we see even more intraday long duration storage required and longer duration storage in the form of multi-day systems to balance renewables. And so we know that both the energy shifting is going to be needed, but also in a high renewable scenario, we see that need for resilience and stability that LDES can provide. Next, we dive into LDES's role in reducing the need for new natural gas. This graph is another output of our modeling, and we compare the amount of natural gas with carbon capture needed to hit a net zero scenario. And so one of these is a scenario with cost competitive LDES that has lifted off, and the other is without. And so you see without LDES, a net zero grid requires 200 plus gigawatts of new natural gas. Much of this capacity is peaker plants that provide reliability to the grid, and some of which only run less than 1% at less than 1% utilization. And so in a scenario with LDES, LDES systems are built instead of this new natural gas reliability. And you get all the benefits of additional use cases that LDES can provide. And so this is one of the reasons that in a scenario with LDES, the grid will save $10 to $20 billion annually due to those avoided capital expenditures and lower operating costs. And so the final point on value proposition is on the durable need for long duration energy storage, especially for the diversity of supply. So in this analysis, we wanted to respond to many of the investors we spoke to discussing the possibility of lithium ion batteries coming down substantially in the cost curve, much more than previously thought. And so we modeled the relationship in two scenarios. First is a moderate scenario where lithium ion meets its current expected cost targets, and we see a robust build out of all three segments, including short duration lithium ion, intraday LDES, and multi-day LDES. And then the second bottom chart responds to this investor view of the world. What happens in an aggressive scenario where lithium ion batteries exceed their targets by 50%? In this case, we see a durable need for multi-day storage, where much of the intraday market can now be economically served by lithium ion. But in any case, we have a durable need for storage in a world with or without lithium ion batteries. So more motivation to keep Jean and David moving, and Vanessa and all of us at trying to achieve our goals. So now that we know what LDES is and its value proposition, the final section of our report and the rest of the webinar today will be focused on the pathway to liftoff for LDES. So this pathway has three areas of progress that are needed for LDES to become a largely self-sustaining industry and be able to deliver on the value proposition that I just outlined. We break this into three areas of focus. The first is technology and cost, something that you've heard about a lot today. The systems need to be reduced in cost by 50% by the end of this decade. Meanwhile, improving round trip efficiency by 7 to 15%. This could come from deployments, which move technologies down the cost curve, but also from R&D. This report is agnostic to how we get there, but this is what we have modeled the market would need to see for LDES to be cost and competitive with other options. And second, we focus on the need for market and regulatory mechanisms to evolve. We identify that we need a predictable resource adequacy compensation equivalent to approximately $75 per kilowatt year in compensation for LDES services. These are the services like flexibility, stability, and reliability that it provides to the grid. This compensation could come in many forms. It can come from capacity payments, value stacking opportunities, carve-outs, mandates. The report goes into a lot of detail of ideas for actions, but we know there's a lot of unique systems out there that would need to understand how it fits and how it makes sense to build this in. But this level of compensation, combined with improved costs and performance, would allow LDES systems to compete for private financing and start to lift off and build out in the next many years. And so finally, if these two things come together, these LDES systems that match technical improvements with market fit would require a flexible and rapid supply chain development to meet demand. This would need to happen by 2035, and there could be up to 10 to 15 gigawatts of annual deployments, which would need manufacturing capacity to supply. And for context, we are able to create less than 1 gigawatt today. So we're talking about a lot of scale up. So I'll deep dive on each of these three areas. The first is to go deeper into what our opening panel discussed around the importance of demonstrations to mature LDES technologies. So this page outlines in detail what a demonstration program could look like over the next decade. The report divides this time into three phases. The first is a short-term demonstrations phase that would happen now that supports many technologies to test and learn and develop. The second phase would be around scaling and selections, where the size of these projects increase and the leverage of existing and emerging business models goes up. And then the final phase is deployments, where projects should continue to grow in size and reduce the amount of external support, i.e. government or other grants, that they are using in order to build. And so these three phases could constitute that $9 to $12 billion, or in gigawatts, 6 to 15 gigawatts of projects that would allow LDES to achieve the learnings and improvements that we project it needs. And so this exact number would depend on the learning rate and consistency across projects. And so these projects are essential to driving LDES technology down their learning curves and also identifying the market use cases that would be needed to eventually reduce external support for these systems. And so we've mentioned use cases a lot so far in the webinar. And so this page, and there's even more detail in the report, dives into 6 specific use cases that we lay out for long duration energy storage. Beyond this summary, we have project templates that have detailed analysis on each of these.
It looks like Kate may just be experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm happy to jump in momentarily and then hand it back to her when she's back. But just to highlight, we have these 6 use cases that we're using to help focus the discussion and to think about, what does it take to commercialize these given technologies. And each one is used for illustrative purposes. Kate, you're back. I was just explaining the purpose of the use cases. I don't know if you want to take it from there. And we may have lost her here. If I can share my screen. All good?
Yeah, I can.
Yep, can you see my screen? I should be sharing the presentation on my screen. Can you see it?
Yep, I can see it. Where did we?
I was just explaining that we're using these 6 use cases as a way to help people kind of focus the thought process on where we see market opportunities and this distinction between sort of near-term markets where I think we can demonstrate de-risk the technology, and then longer-term opportunities that may ultimately be larger, but maybe a few years off. So I think this is a particular area that really highlights where the department is thinking in terms of what is it going to take to get market adoption and achieve scale. Maybe just want to move on to the next slide from there. You can take it from there.
Yep, that works. Great. And so I think we want to bring this together to tie from our technology page to our business case page. How are we thinking about different use cases needing specific characteristics and criteria? So you shouldn't read this page that the ones that are checked are the only important ones. Rather, for these different use cases, these checkboxes are the most important. So for example, microgrid resiliency, we know that duration is important across these, but in this case, ramp rate and response time would be incredibly important for a system to provide that resilience. Whereas in an energy market participation, the levelized cost of storage would be much more important to compete with other options in that market. And so I think we can move on to the second area of our report, thinking about the market conditions. And so, as David mentioned, in 2023, there's no one geography that's providing enough revenue for standalone LDES deployments. And so there's geographic differences in both the grid conditions and policy and market constructs that make certain areas more. Other places on this chart couldn't leapfrog into favorable positions.
Hey,
Can you hear me?
yeah, it keeps jumping in and out. Do you want maybe I just wrap it up from here? We only have a couple minutes left anyway. I think you covered the first
Yep.
portion really well.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, no problem. So basically here we're showing the interplay between the regional market and policy factors that may create opportunities for that commercial adoption and the scale up of long duration energy storage technologies. And if you look at the report, it dives into a lot more detail on that front as well. Here, the next topic we're going to cover just briefly is that we show the need for the formation of a flexible rapid supply chain. And on the left-hand side, you can see the projected annual deployment of LDES if it achieves liftoff, and that ramp up through the 2030s with excess capacity going to export post 2040. And just a reminder that we currently have less than a gigawatt of deployment capacity today. So this is a significant build out. And as we see that market kind of emerging, there's work that needs to be done starting today to kind of lay the foundation so that that capacity is online as that market emerges. From there, I think it would be helpful to highlight the goals by 2030. So we want to leave you, with an understanding of kind of where this report lands, and then also just highlighting that, we're updating our mental model for kind of how things are playing out based on changes in the marketplace, those technology improvements and cost reductions that we talked about earlier, and to keep kind of in real time understanding of kind of where things are, and so we can be as effective as possible in accelerating commercial liftoff. So the leading indicators can tell us if we are on track to lift off, and lagging indicators can tell us where we are off track. We're excited to use these goals to monitor the progress towards liftoff in future versions of the report. But we're not going to get there alone. We recognize, it's been highlighted earlier, this is going to be private sector led, government enabled. So we're doing everything we can from a DOE side and a sort of a whole of government approach to support the commercialization and scale up, but recognize it's really going to come down to that private sector leadership to make this possible. So, really want to highlight the leaders from the Office of Technology Transitions, Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, the Loan Program Office, Office of Electricity, for speaking, for joining us today to highlight the significance and opportunity here. And in that same vein of collaboration, I want to thank all of you for joining us. Had really wonderful attendance today. We see this as really just one milestone in continued engagement with all of you on this incredible opportunity. So please, again, liftoff.energy.gov, and we look forward to further collaboration. Thank you for attending our webinar.
Thank you so much, everybody.